Welcome to the May 28th meeting of the Maryland Higher Education Commission. My name is Cassie Moss. I'm the chair of the commission, and I'm joined by several of my fellow commissioners. We actually have more than a quorum this morning. Joining us in person are Commissioners Thompson and Burnham, and joining us virtually are Commissioners Bands, Howe, Serrano, Tabor, Stalin, and Williams. So we have 8 commissioners right now, and we are expecting Commissioner Agu, the vice chair, any minute. So we'll have 9 total commissioners out of the 12 appointed commissioners. We have a very full agenda today, but before we begin, I want to make it very clear that we are going to give the review meeting, which is the first item on the agenda, its due. Everybody will have time to speak. Each university will have 15 minutes of uninterrupted time. The commissioners will have time to get all of our questions answered. So we're not going to rush things just because it's raining and we're starting a little late, and because we have a full agenda. The commission staff has very wisely put the items on the agenda in order of time sensitivity. So if we don't get to everything today, that's fine. Again, we want to give everything its full due, and so we will just proceed through the agenda with a hard stop at 1 o'clock because we are mindful of everybody's time. So I don't want anyone to think that we're going to be rushed. Quite to the contrary. Both parties, the Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA, and Morgan State University have put a lot of time and energy into this submission and to the documents today. We want to make sure that we hear all sides and everybody gets ample time. So I just wanted to start with that. Turning to our agenda, I am told by Ms. Ng that we have no public comments. I'll turn it over to Secretary Rai for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to May 2025 meeting of Maryland Higher Education Commission. We have a very full agenda with the review meeting happening at the top. So I will not give my formal remarks today. So, Madam Chair, let's start with the review.
Fair enough. So just to, as a reminder, the process for review meetings has changed since last we met. And I just want to review that so that everybody knows the ground rules. As I mentioned earlier, each president will be given 15 minutes of
Madam Chair, question.
Yes.
Are we skipping the approval of the minutes?
Oh, thank you, sir. We are not.
Okay.
That was inadvertent. Thank you, Commissioner Burnham. We do have commission meeting minutes from our last meeting on April 23rd to be approved by the commission. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? All right, the minutes are unanimously approved. Thank you, Dr. Burnham. So moving to the review meeting. As a reminder, the process has changed. As I mentioned, each president will be given 15 minutes of uninterrupted time to present to the commission. The president may delegate a portion of the presentation to others on the president's team. And in fact, both presidents have chosen to do that. They asked me, and I, as the chair, granted all of the relevant motions. So MICA will have 1 additional speaker, and Morgan will have 3 additional speakers in addition to their president. Both sides were given the opportunity to have the same amount of additional speakers, and this is where they land. So we'll get to the names of the speakers in the fullness of time. Also, Dr. Wilson, the president of Morgan, is traveling internationally. And so Morgan asked if he would be able to join via Zoom or via Google Meet. I said yes, so Dr. Wilson will be joining us remotely. So each president and her or his designees will have 15 minutes of uninterrupted time, and there will be no questions from the commissioners at that time. And afterwards, the commissioners may ask questions of MICA, of Morgan, or of Secretary Rai and his team. Unlike in past times, the secretary and the secretary's staff will not be a presenting party, but they are available to answer questions from us. Any questions from my fellow commissioners about the process? Okay. I also want to be clear going in what the standard of review is, so we're all on the same page about what we're being asked to decide, because that also has changed due to the enactment of a law during the last legislative session, the 2024 legislative session. House Bill 1244 passed, and it has somewhat tweaked the law that is applicable to us today. So the law now distinguishes between unreasonable duplication and unnecessary duplication. Unreasonable program duplication would cause harm to the state or students attending institutions of higher education, as opposed to unnecessary program duplication, which is in violation of the state's equal educational opportunity obligations under state and federal law. Now, in this instance, because MHEC is a private institution, that second prong of unnecessary program duplication isn't applicable. So therefore, the only analysis that this commission is being asked to undertake today is relating to unreasonable program duplication. Again, we're being asked to consider whether there is unreasonable program duplication which would cause harm to the state or students attending institutions of higher education in the state. And it is a two-part analysis. First, the commission must determine whether the program is in fact duplicative, and there are several factors to consider there. And then if the commission does determine that the program is duplicative, the commission must determine whether the content is unreasonable duplication. And there are certain factors to be considered there. All of the commissioners have been given the standard of review, and I know my fellow commissioners, they have all read the materials at least once and have this in front of them. But I just wanted, for the purpose of transparency, everybody to understand what the ground rules are and what the applicable law is. So that, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for leaving
No,
in
thank
rush
you.
hour.
Thank you very much.
So that brings us to today's review hearing, and it's related to an application from the Maryland Institute College of Art, the Maryland Institute College of Art, or MHEC. They presented a Bachelor's of Design in Interior Design proposal on December 16th of 2024. Morgan State University, which I will refer to as Morgan, objected on January 18th of this year. MHEC filed a response to the objection on March 10th. And on March 28th, Secretary Reiner issued his decision letter finding in favor of Morgan. So that is where we are today. MHEC then filed a letter with this commission asking us to review Secretary Reiner's decision. And that is the procedural history and what brings us here today. So that is the process, the procedure. Any questions from my fellow commissioners before we hear from the two institutions? All right. Micah, President McCormick, you have your 15 minutes and you can delegate to your colleagues.
That sounds great. Well, greetings and good morning, Ms. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Secretary. MHEC has requested a full review of the March 28th decision by Secretary Reiner for our proposed Bachelor of Design and Interior Design program. MHEC is the oldest independent, continuously degree-granting College of Art and Design in the United States. Maryland Institute College of Art will reach 200 years in 2026. Our incredible institution calls Baltimore and Maryland its home, not just contributing to our creative ecosystem, but also to our economy, our communities, and our collective future. Arts-based liberal education produces graduates with a range of transferable skills and a deep sense of social responsibility. The combination makes our graduates both exceptional and invaluable. An arts-based education is uniquely powerful. It nurtures critical thinking, communication, and problem-solving skills. It empowers students to go beyond design fundamentals and prepare them to meet the challenges of professional practice at a much different level of competency. Our mission is to expand access to high-quality art and design education, and we remain committed to fostering innovative, inclusive, and differentiated educational opportunities for students in Maryland and beyond. Could you imagine Bolton Hill, Station North, Baltimore, or Maryland without MHEC? The Bachelor of Design and Interior Design is rooted both philosophically and pedagogically within our mission. It's part of our vision. It's part of our expertise at an institution that excels in art and design. It responds to an urgent workforce need and presents structurally and pedagogically a distinct model from the current program in interior design at Morgan State. The reach of our program, again, its inclusiveness of material, The commitment to retention, persistence, and graduation of our students ensures that it will meet critical workforce demands. It's my understanding that this is exactly what the state wants us to do, that we are in the best position to do so. Further, there were no Sellinger funds or other state dollars that have been used in the development of program and are not anticipated for use of the VDES program. The Secretary's rationale conflates two separate oversight functions. I do not believe that Sellinger is the argument here. This is about academic program development. I will now turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Reiner Barkley, to provide you with context and history of the program, justification on workforce needs, and differentiating factors and distinctiveness of our program that avoids the notion of duplication.
So, hello, everybody. Will we be seeing the PowerPoint deck on the screen, or will
Sure.
I be walking through that?
Dr. Dow?
Okay.
Yep.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on every slide. To some degree, it's a takeaway for all of you and a reference that hopefully synthesizes the reports, some of the substantive or salient points. But I do want to use it to hit on some key elements. And so once it comes up, I'll get ready. And I'll just say slide as we move to each piece. Great. So if you go ahead. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular slide, but I do think it's worth noting the significant, and I mean very significant, difference in mission and approach. This isn't about a deficit at Morgan. This is about actualizing sort of the full mission potential of the campus in key applied design innovation areas related to design and fine arts. And MHEC is really budgetarily a small master's comprehensive. That's really from a Carnegie classification standpoint. But the overlay is it's a specialized Carnegie classification, a specialized fine arts school for art and design, where Morgan is really a broad research university. It is indeed an HBCU, but it really covers the gamut of multiple disciplinary areas. And so that ubiquity of Morgan State's mission in terms of the broad reach is really fundamentally different from us. And so what our goal here is really to actualize a prospective student market at a national level with competitors that are directly in our Carnegie classification area and related to the ACAD, the Association for Independent Colleges of Art and Design. Those are really who we're competing with at a national scale and broader regional scale. And it's also to address a labor market demand. We have several alumni who are interior designers. Either they got that education at MICA or took the foundations of the BFA and went on and got postgraduate work in interior design. And the committee work with those folks in advisory group helped to inform really this degree. I'd say the other thing I want to highlight is this is a key element to our financial model. In essence, it's no sort of secret that MICA during COVID and post-COVID was hit pretty hard, like a lot of independent art and design schools, as well as smaller liberal arts schools. And this is a fundamental element to our financial plan. And so it's really important to understand that this degree sort of didn't come out of thin air. There was a strong feasibility assessment done related to labor, a strong assessment done related to national standing and the relationship of this degree to our competitors, who our overlap is with, and so on. Next slide. I want to just note here that we have a long history from the really from the very onset of offering degree programs in relationship to design, applied design. In particular, really the institution started out as an applied design institution, not a fine arts institution. It was really during the 70s, the 60s and 70s that this institution got the stronger fine arts designation and really developed its programming in those areas in a much more robust way. Historically, though, institutions had decorative arts from the 40s and 50s. It had interior design for 30, 40 plus years. In areas related to interior design, like textile arts, furniture, ceramics, metalwork, lighting, Those are all fundamental programming elements at our institution. So there's a very long history from an interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary frame of offering disciplines that directly tie into the interior design and interior architecture space. Next slide. The institution had this program, and what happened really is it evolved. It evolved into interior architecture, and then it evolved into environmental planning, environmental design, and then it evolved into architectural design. Elements of those programs kept on as specializations. I think primarily because of the shift in the 80s and 90s into a pure fine arts institution. They had drifted away some from the applied design fields that the institution over the last 15 years has been trying to recapture. The institution let this sort of evolve out. And so really, in some respects, this is a proactive kind of coming full circle as we come into our bicentennial about a rediscovery of applied design and applied arts. And so we just had a creative media production program approved with 4 co-majors in areas like game design and film and media. We have a applied design and innovation hub that's related to product design, biodesign and biofabrication, architectural design and graphic design and UX. In essence, a lot of the work that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years, the interior design piece is a key transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary element of that vision around recapturing applied design. And so I can't speak to the politics about how this happened or we all know departments have emphases and depend upon who the faculty are, things evolve in certain ways. So I can't sit here as an armchair quarterback and say it was a mistake to do this, depended upon the labor market, the times, and what was going on. But those disciplines that feed into interior design have been sustained throughout these last 20, 30 years. I think that's the key part. Many of the multidisciplinary tenets of the interior design program have stayed intact at MHEC, like fiber and textiles, like lighting. So that's an important key element to consider. Next slide. I just want to note that evolution piece and the differences. We look at Morgan State's programs, they really resonate out of the construction management STEM fields. Ours really come out of the traditional fine arts fields and applied design areas. And they're undergirded by different distributed competencies. We're situated in a BFA culture that distributes across the baseline of our programs. There's a gen ed culture at Morgan State, which is really fundamentally different in the way that we go about training designers and artists at our institution. Next slide. I just want to draw your attention to the prestigious ranking levels of the campus nationally in many key fields, in particular art and design broadly. So our competitive market is not local. I mean, I really have to reinforce that. Our competitive market, which you'll see in a minute, is national and international in some cases. Next slide. I just want to highlight the workforce needs are significant. There's a strong, in the appendix items, in the end, if your primary judgment is whether or not there is ample demand in Maryland or greater Maryland into the DC area in this field, there is ample demand. There's expected to be over 1,400 openings over the next decade. I think we have to acknowledge that interior design cuts into other areas like exhibition and experience design, interior architecture, architecture design, and so and even branding. And so the need in all of those fields broadly is high. But if we just look at interior design only, it's significant. And if we look at the productivity of Morgan State to meet that demand, it is even by their projections going out to potentially 19 to 20 students graduating, the gap is massive. If we go into the next slide, I did just some math, and if we take their graduation rates and their retention rates and we assess their ability to meet the demand, they'd have to have 139 new majors a year. If we drop that down to 25%, we're talking about roughly 85 students. I mean, it's just, so there is plenty of room in this space for more than one program to meet the demand, strictly speaking, in the interior design labor field. They would have to sustain 339 graduates. And if we turn to the MHEC support letter, it's clear that the president has noted the capacity gap, the capacity limits and ceilings at Morgan State around their infrastructure. So how are they going to have 339, even if we're estimating they meet 25% of the demand down and gradate that down? That is a massive infrastructural investment, massive. And so if we just do the math, on its face, it's an overreach that there's not space for us in this sector, in this field. And especially when we consider who we're competing against, because we're not competing against folks in the state. If you look at the top producers of market share nationally in interior design, the zip code nationally, 4 of the 5 top producers who own the market share are direct overlap competitors with us. So for us to be competing with SCAD and Parsons and the schools that we lose students to here and bring to the state to not have interior design is a strategic mistake as well. It's a positioning mistake for us to not be offering that in order to compete at a national level. If we look at Morgan's current rate, if we just hold out there for a minute, they have the 3rd lowest producers of graduates nationally in the zip code. So out of 123 producers, they're producing right now 120. If they bounce up to 20 a year, they're still in the bottom, by far in the bottom quartile. So there is a national demand for interior design that goes beyond and extends beyond Morgan State, Maryland. Next slide. If we look at the competitors, those in yellow, Morgan State virtually has no overlap with MHEC. They have less than 0.25% overlap with us over 2 years in our application pool. So what that means is the students apply to us to say, we're not coming to MHEC. They go to Morgan State at less than 0.25% of our total applicant pool. It's just a handful of students. If we look at the folks we do compete with, at 8, 9, 10%, 7% of overlap, 140 students. If you look at that slide, for instance, with Pratt, they offer interior design, and they are significant. They have significant overlap in our pool. That's who it's not Morgan State who we're competing with. That is who MHEC is competing with. That is our overlap. Those are direct federal student loan clearinghouse numbers. They speak directly to the folks in our pool over a 2-year period. And you can see those highlighted in the yellow that offer interior design and have the highest level of market share in that zip code designation. Next slide. This is our key distinctions. One of the objections were there weren't key distinctions between MHEC. I mean, just on its basis, if you consider the gen ed versus fine arts curriculum, there's a 30-ish% variance in terms of the curriculum right off the bat before we even get started. In essence, Morgan State offered 35% of its major is gen ed. That's not how MHEC will be offering this degree. There's other curricular emphases in materiality that are deep parts of the curriculum. They may be touched on in the Morgan State, but they're fundamental in the MHEC program. And then I'd say, secondly, there's an association, a transdisciplinary association here that is all fine arts and applied design related. It's not construction management, it's not STEM fields, it's those core areas that I referenced earlier. And then finally, the delivery. It is a there's not this dichotomy between online versus resident. It is a low residency hybrid model, which is really a fundamentally different delivery mechanism where we will have students in our campus in intensives, but they'll also be taking synchronous and asynchronous courses. And so there's a fundamental delivery difference there as well, which is not resident student in its orientation, which is primarily Morgan's focus.
Dr. Bradley, you have about 1 minute left.
Okay. The last few notes really sort of reinforce some of what I've said in terms of there's an access and equity issue here in terms of the part of what we're trying to do is reach some student populations both nationally and regionally that we haven't before, and particular mid-career professionals is some of the focus of our program, not first time in college. If we go to the next slide, we really see this as an opportunity to increase degree production in the state around interior design. Our alumni are telling us that we should be doing this for the firms that they actually run. In fact, one of the larger interior design firms in the state that was just purchased or taken over by another firm. She spoke at our graduate graduation ceremony last week, and she direct access into these fields, telling us that they need more arts and design based students in the sector and in the workforce. Next slide. I think just what we're asking the commission to do is approve our program, because otherwise Micah is hampered in fully carrying out his mission, innovating his curriculum, meeting the diversity of learners interested in art and design in particular, fulfilling his commitment to support workforce development, and actually there is a real potential for financial harm to the institution here. And so we believe this helps keep us relevant at from a national advantage. And we think nobody in the state approaches art and design like we do. And we could do something special and different here. And clearly no unreasonable donation.
Thank you for your presentation. We will hold any questions we have until after we hear Morgan. Thank you. Next up, we have Morgan State University. I believe President Wilson is going to be joining us via Google Meet because he is traveling internationally, and he did ask for permission in advance. And then also, Morgan asked in advance to have Dr. Keys, Professor Frazier, and Dr. Sen speak. All of you in 15 minutes. So is Professor Wilson with us?
We may not all be able to speak because I did receive a message from Dr. Wilson saying that he is in Singapore and hasn't been able to access
Okay.
the internet. So I will be speaking.
Wonderful, Dr. Keys. Do you want to begin?
Yes.
Okay.
So on behalf of President Wilson and our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Hung Tao Yu, I bring you greetings from Morgan State University. Greetings to Mr. Moss and Secretary Reiner. I am Phyllis Keys, the Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs. At Morgan State, we take very seriously the matter of program duplication. We recognize that it's best for everyone when state resources can be directed to areas of highest need and to programs that are the most effective. So I will say that one of the things that's hardest about program duplication is to understand the impacts that it will have until after another program is implemented. So it remains to be seen, because as a program is more flexible or has some differentiating aspects to it, it could detract from the program that we currently have. I would say that Dr. Abimbola of Sojo became our Dean of the School of Architecture and Planning, and she's been very innovative. Under her leadership, the unit has taken initiatives that have been engaging beyond our campus to the broader community, and that have allowed our students to showcase their skills, the outcome of their faculty engagement, and showcase the applied learning that results from our programs. We are concerned that an additional design program in the area will slow the momentum that has been building. Suzanne Frazier, the program director for interior design, is here to speak on behalf of the school and more specifically about the program in interior design. Suzanne.
Thank you. You ready? I go fast. Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Commissioners, thank you for your service. I'm actually in my third term as a member of the State Board of Certified Interior Designers, so I have a small idea of the amount of work that you have to do. I'm celebrating my 20th year at Morgan State University. I'm more senior than you. And I'm very proud to be working at Morgan State. Next slide, please. Due to popular demand, I started teaching interior design classes at Morgan State School of Architecture and Planning 15 years ago. I initiated our interior design degree program 7 years ago with the support of the university administration. And next slide. I appreciate the opportunity to describe the hard-earned success that the interior design program at Morgan State has achieved. Within 10 months of receiving approval from MSU's Board of Regents and from MHEC, thank you all very much, I rolled out the first semester of courses in fall 2018. After the first 3 semesters, we were compelled to switch to remote learning due to the global coronavirus pandemic. Next slide, please. In spite of this, our enrollment continued to grow, due in no small part to the intense recruiting by the interior design faculty, myself included, and advertising campaigns generated by Morgan State University's recruitment office, as seen here in the CBS News feature. Next slide, please. Our collective efforts have served to increase the status of this high demand degree. Our program has expanded the profile of the interior design profession and interior design career opportunities, both locally and nationally. We are an anchor of the annual Baltimore Design Expedition, in addition to national design conventions and academic design conferences. Our interior design faculty are internationally recognized design educators, including our esteemed dean, Dr. Abimbola Osoja, who herself is a certified licensed interior designer and a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. Even one of our School of Architecture and Planning colleagues was just recognized by Forbes magazine as one of the top 20 residential designers in the United States of America. Next slide, please. Our students participate in national design events where we attract more students from all across the country. This spring, the Morgan State School of Architecture and Planning team, one half of which are interior design majors, won Disney's Imagineering Design Competition, besting a cadre of 85 national teams. Our first place winners are now starting professional design internships as Disney Imagineering in Glendale, California. Next slide. We've experienced exponential growth since our first year in 2018. This infographic shows that non-resident interior design majors are set to outnumber Maryland resident students next year with a 51% annual increase versus 19.4% increase for Maryland residents. Next slide. And our four-year graduation rates have rebounded and exceeded expectations post-pandemic. Next slide, please. The class of 2025 nearly doubled our annual percentages. While employment trends for interior design follow those of other professions across the country, our graduates, next slide, are employed in nationally recognized design firms, including Smith Group, HOK, MOI, Mosley, Air St. Gross, Sherwin-Williams. Next slide, please. They hold faculty positions at Montgomery College, at Morgan State University, and the Community College of Baltimore County. Next slide. And designer positions in Howard County government and Arlington County government. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, this is right there. And at the Office of the Architect of the Capitol. Since its inception, the interior design program was devised to be a collaborative unit because its rationale was to meet the demand for a four-year degree from students in local two-year institutions. Our state-of-the-art facility, active relationships with professional organizations, and representation on the Maryland State Board of Certified Interior Designers, and support initiatives like the annual career fair at Morgan State School of Architecture that has over 70 firms coming to employ our students, our alumni, and all the students from the community colleges that want to attend. Morgan State exceeds in delivering educational content and state-of-the-art design facilities, including a brand new grant-funded materials library. This year, the interior design program will be offering courses off campus, increasing flex class offerings to better support the robust articulation agreement with our colleagues at Anne Arundel, at Montgomery, and CCBC. Next slide, please. The program will continue cutting-edge lighting design research in its new lighting laboratory, initiate high-performance phase change building material research and development, expand upon color theory research. Next slide, please. And its materials library, and conclude the post-pandemic occupancy evaluations. We are currently preparing for our program's national accreditation visit this fall and are confident of earning accreditation next year in spring 2026. And just to clarify, national accreditation requires that schools offer 30 credits of general education. Morgan State University is the optimal source for this professional interior design degree because it leads immediately to licensure and certification for our graduates. In their senior year, Morgan State interior design majors begin taking the NCIDQ exam, which focuses exclusively and entirely on the health, the safety, and the welfare of the public that we as interior design professionals and employees of the state of Maryland strive to serve. Next slide, please. What Morgan State's Bachelor of Science in Interior Design degree is achieving is more Maryland graduates filling more Maryland jobs for more Maryland design excellence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, now that both institutions have completed their presentations, it's now up to commissioners to ask questions. You may ask questions from either institution or from the MHEC staff team. So I open the floor to my fellow commissioners. I think we have 5 commissioners online and 4 of us in person. Can you all hear us on Google Meet?
Yeah.
Good, okay, great. Anybody want to start out with questions? It may make sense to have both groups up here together.
We apologize for lack of sales.
Yes. We're all just getting adjusted to the new, this is the first time we've met in this room. We have recently moved. Great. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Burnham?
I'll begin. Thank you. I'd first like to commend representatives of both institutions for your presentations. They were clear, emphasized the salient points, and essentially reinforced what we had been sent in the materials that you had submitted earlier. As I listened to you and looked over the materials last night, it seemed to me that the program, the design program that's being proposed would really be attractive to a lot of people who are looking for a design degree. And the fact that it is being offered in what you call the low residency mode means that it would be easier for people to actually take the program and engage in it. Once if you were authorized to go ahead and begin this, if you chose to do it, and you went through your marketing and advertising, what's to say that in addition to the national or international audience that you have indicated you designed this for, that people in Maryland would not become attracted to it as well? If they are looking for a design program,
We hope they will.
okay. That's what concerns me there, the potential for students who otherwise would have not had the option, would find a way to go to the Morgan State program. And once this came online, I can easily imagine it becoming a real source of competition, and therefore have the potential to impede the growth of the Morgan program that they've documented as they've been experiencing in the last 3 or 4 years. So what do you have to say about that?
There's more than enough room based on the workforce needs right now. And when we look at the statistics on the graduation rates through the National Clearinghouse, we see that there are not as many graduates. They did not speak in their data today in the presentation to what those numbers were, but based on the numbers that we can find, we brought those to light. So I think that there's more than enough space with the workforce demands. And in addition to that, we teach it in a very different way. So bachelor's in design is very different than what they're doing, and I'll let Ray take it from there.
I'd also say there's caps, right? And it's your design program, unless, it's a rare exception. You're not going to, the campus doesn't have programs that go beyond 40, 50 students at my campus. Like, we're a small school. So and because this is low residency and intensive, there would never, this is not, and online is actually more rigorous oftentimes and requires more caps than, and these blended programs, because there's other supplement that has to happen. You have to manage different kinds of expectations. So an online program actually is, unless you're talking about a Walden or a Liberty University, which has a very different model of online, you really, there's a quality control factor there. So there's a natural cap on these kind of programs from the standpoint of just the number of students that you think. I believe there's room in the state for 3 to 4 probably interior design programs pretty easily. And so, yeah, to meet the demand. And also, I think the other point that I really tried to make is Morgan State would have to grow ad infinitum in order to meet the demand. And they do not have the capacity. Very few interior designs in programs that I know of, with rare exception, have the capacity in the studio infrastructure to grow ad infinitum. You just can't do it. They're studio programs. So there's always going to be natural caps because of the nature of work that happens in those programs. So I just, the view that there's not enough space with the workforce development needs, with the student population, and the fact that we have such a high national profile where we're recruiting more than 70% of our students out of state. I just don't,
40% stay in state.
And 40% stay in state, by the way, when they come here. So there's an in-migration dimension here. That argument, I think, just based on the data, does not hold up, and based on the way these courses are sort of offered. I hope that helps.
It does help. Seems to me that both institutions have a lot to offer in this area. I really think that the state of Maryland and its citizens would really be well served if the two institutions could find a way to collaborate in a way that expands options for everybody, and perhaps would do an even better job of meeting that excess demand that you alluded to.
I just want to say I'm impressed with the leadership and the approach of Morgan State in terms of generating this program and the resiliency to have launched a program that's heavy studio based during COVID, because many of those programs would have gone away, and to sort of sustain that leadership, we've been able to do that as an impressive outcome. They're just a different kind of program. They're situated in an architecture school with close affinity to construction management and STEM disciplines, with a very different approach to their general education curriculum. And there's almost nothing the same. Like, it's just, we may have a materials class that's similar in terms of name, but even that will be different. It's just, they're just really holistically different programs.
And in anticipation of, question around collaboration, we thought, what is it that we could do? Well, I think elective courses at each college, like that's a chance for collaboration. Maybe we can offer an elective class there, and vice versa. There are aspects of what they are truly great at, and there's aspects of what we're really great at, and that would be a chance for collaboration. We did try to get in touch with them, and we went through the secretary's office, and we did try on 2 occasions, and it didn't happen at that point, but it may happen down the road. So that's where we were on collaboration at that time.
Other questions?
I have 2, if no one on my desk. And I echo what Mr. Burnham said. I think that, first of all, thank you all so much for the presentation. And thank you, I'd like to say, light versus heat is very important in these. We all care about the Maryland students, and I really appreciate the professionalism of this. These can be contentious issues sometimes. My one question for Mike and team, I'm going to, I don't know what slide number it was, but it was the one of the things I've heard you say that the students you are competing for are different than the ones that Morgan is competing for. When I look at their data, and I take it at face value that they have a high proportion of non-resident students who are part of that. How do you answer that? Basically, what I take that to mean is there are lots of students who are in your program that aren't necessarily Maryland residents, so on and so forth. So how does that comport with, I think, how with your statement that it's not the same pool of students that those are?
Yeah, I looked, the students that come to us have portfolio requirements that are really everybody at the institution has to require. So if you apply to MHEC, you have to complete a 14 artifact-based portfolio structure. You oftentimes have had to have taken AP art and courses. So the rigor broadly, I'm talking at the institutional level, not it's just the interior design, because I'm sure they have some of those kind of requirements as well. But broadly, the profile of our student is a student who's applied to Pratt, SCAD, Parsons, California College of Arts, right? That's the students that we have. And when I look at their actual data from the Student Loan Clearinghouse over the last 2 years, I saw 3 students in our pool of 12,000 applications that had overlap, 3 to 4 of those, I think. So think about it, that's less than 0.25% of almost 12,000 applications applied to both institutions. And that's while they have interior design and architecture, right? They have those programs in place the last 3 years, 4 years. So there's no substantive, the kind of students that we will attract to this program will likely be students that are coming to us. There'll be 2 populations. There'll be adult learners who are trying to transition a career, or there'll be students who couldn't quite hit the requirements of a BFA that are in our pool. But they're still coming from those same sources, right? They're not a student who's applying to a state school or a large R1. We tend to have very little overlap with those kind of students.
Different value.
Yeah, different value proposition. So it doesn't show up in the data, the actual data the last 2 or 3 years. It's also not the persona in terms of marketing speak. It's not the persona of the kind of student that we tend to have in our pools. There's just very little overlap there. They tend to come from fine arts backgrounds, traditionally, oftentimes art magnet schools, oftentimes all over the country. And so we expect this to be, to some degree, Carnegie Mellon calls it kind of their mini, Carnegie Mellon obviously is a very well-regarded fine arts school. The BDES is kind of a mini BFA. It sort of has a lot of the same requirements, but there is some latitude to play within that with more electives and to do more self-directed study. We expect, though, the students oftentimes, if they're coming from the traditional ranks, to oftentimes be the same. If they're coming from the mid-career professional ranks, they're not going to have any overlap with the students program. So we feel like those 2 conduits, plus the fact that 30% of our students are international, it doesn't seem to bear out in the actual numbers.
Excuse me, just 2 questions for Morgan. One, just on in terms of the entry requirements compared to Micah in terms of portfolio, things like that. How similar is that for students who are coming into your program? Do you have similar portfolio requirements, things like that, or is that more?
We're open admission. We accept everyone. We meet them where we are, and we take them where they need to be.
And my core question here is, when I look at the labor data, so 1,400 graduates, interior design maybe in Maryland over the next 10 or 9 years. I believe I've worked at about 139 per year. When I look at the data, let's say I were to take what you all did this year, was I believe was 22, or in terms of graduates from your program, which I believe is going to be 22 this year.
Yes.
Yes, and if I were to double that to 44, which is tremendous for any program, and that still leaves about 100 gap in terms of what the market needs. So I guess my question is, make the argument to me about there not being the room, because when I see what the market needs, I still see, even if I were to double the number of graduates that you have, there's still this 100 gaps. So help me square that circle for me.
That's such an important question. Thank you. So speaking as a licensed interior designer, Washington, D.C.'s metro region is the highest employer of interior designers in the country, and they have the highest salaries in the country. Everyone wants to be here in Baltimore studying interior design so that they can go get one of the big federal jobs, healthcare jobs, or education jobs, the 3 biggest employers in the state of Maryland. We have more employed interior designers, certified interior designers, in the state of Maryland than we have in New York City, than in Chicago, than in Atlanta. So what our education gives our students is what professional interior designers need to know: health, safety, and welfare. And without that, you're going to hit a ceiling in your corporate professional, hopefully, endeavors to be a successful interior designer. You have to know about health, safety, and welfare. And yes, construction management and architecture because the interior project is managed in the construction industry and it's housed within an edifice, which is architecture. So it's all of a fold, and it's all about public service to the health, safety, and welfare of building occupants. So these federal jobs, these healthcare jobs, these education jobs that are here in the Baltimore, Washington metro region are looking for professional interior designers who know how to function within the construction industry.
I want to add to that on the number side, because you're looking at numbers coming out of the pandemic and everything that's been, but also at the start of a new century, I'm going to say, or a new decade for the School of Architecture and Planning, with the energy that our new dean brings and the restructuring that the school recently went to highlight the construction management and highlight the interior design areas. So all of that change, the new dean 2023 and forward, represents this new phase that we're coming into or going into, starting into after the pandemic. So the fact that we have 22 students graduating at the end of the pandemic is not really the right starting point for doubling, I would say. Like, because maybe it's going to be something more than double, because now we've gotten past that point and have something new on the horizon. So I'm not sure that 22 to 44 is right. It might be 22 to 50, it might be 22 to 60. So I'm not sure that doubling that would be the best way to calculate our next change.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, no, that's the end of that's my question. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for both teams. The information that I received today is good to hear, and it does confirm some of the things in which I read through your materials. So thanks again for being here in your presentation. First, for Micah, I wanted to go to your materials directly to item N related to COMAR, and where it's indicated consistency with the state's minority student achievement goals. And I was happy to read that recruitment of diverse students is a priority. Could you please detail that a little so I can better understand? I know you indicate that you want to reach students of diverse background, but a little bit more detail would be helpful.
We think the adult learner, that kind of segment, if you think of the 2 or 3 segments we're looking to target, we think that adult learner will help us attract students of diverse socioeconomic backgrounds in some ways that we're not able to sort of address right now through our traditional BFA program. We also believe that the reach of MHEC nationally has allowed us to recruit a lot of first-generation international students. And so we were about 30% international, but those students are oftentimes here as permanent residents. And so we pick up a lot of diversity from many different countries, from China to Central South America, through our national and international recruitment efforts. And we believe the accessibility of this kind of program would help us bolster that further. So I think both regionally, the adult learner would be a key dimension, but also I think, on the national and international front, those are 2 ways that the accessibility of this program, which is different than a resident program like at Morgan State or we traditionally have offered, will really allow us to open our doors in some ways that haven't, both on the socioeconomic front as well as the ethnic diversity front. I'd also say, though, that our colleague nicely put basically some of our argument, which is that the workforce needs are diverse enough that the specializations the campus will offer will really allow for nice differentiation. Them coming out of a construction management focus and architectural focus around federal and state employment opportunities, the kind that they're really targeting, will really be different than some of the ways that our students will get placed. Our students will be practicing artists oftentimes that will come out of this program, or self-employed. And so we think that opens up both employment diversity within the way that we address that labor need, but also the access and privilege question that Dr. Thompson's asking.
I'd actually like Dr. Thompson, if I may, we also offer many scholarship programs, and in the current administration, we have to talk in terms of finding people of Baltimore and people of lower socioeconomic status. We cannot use language of DEI and things like that, but we have found other ways to make sure that we're bringing students of all different backgrounds to our college. And we have programs that we work at the college, both at the adult level, as well as undergraduate, pre-college, and youth programs to make sure that we have this pipeline of students coming to our colleges. So there's a great focus at the college on bringing diverse populations to our schools.
And I appreciate that. I understand the international piece, which is, kind of iffy right now in this country. I wanted to know more locally.
That's right.
What are you
We
doing?
have a wonderful ACAP program that we actually bring students to.
What is ICAP? What is that?
ACAP, which is
Okay.
a program that brings students from the Baltimore schools and
Okay.
actually give them a full ride to our college.
Okay, so you have AdCap. Is there
With
anything
ACAP, we have
else?
multiple scholarship programs.
Okay.
Those from people who are individual donors as well as institutional scholarship aid that we provide to students, and we would be doing it for this program, just like we do it for all of our programs.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Similarly, with Morgan State University, could you please describe your program and how you're recruiting, I would say, more statewide or across state, not necessarily internationally, but across state and within? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we have established articulation agreements with the 3 local 2-year institutions that have interior design programs. That's like BC, Montgomery, and Anne Arundel. And actually, Anne Arundel's articulation agreement was just updated. So we accept all of their credits into our program. So when there's a non-traditional student who is interested in getting their 4-year interior design degree, we actually encourage them to enroll in Montgomery or CCBC or Anne Arundel because they have more flexible schedules. So they can do the first 2 years, we actually call them 2+2. They do the first 2 years at the community colleges, and then they can prepare themselves over those 2 years to come in and take our intensive on-campus program in our state-of-the-art facilities, and then graduate with their 4-year degree. So we do have flexibility that way. Across the state, we also recruit at Essex on the Eastern Shore, recruit in Western Maryland, and we do active recruiting in high schools in Washington, D.C. And just through word of mouth, we have students coming in from Northern Virginia. However, we don't actively recruit in Northern Virginia. We also have articulation agreements with Del Tech and those students, so they do not have 2-year interior design degrees, but we take their credit. Did I answer?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
We also have a host of articulation agreements with the community colleges as well. And, with a focus of making sure that they will articulate fully all of the credits that they excuse me.
I know it was mentioned that your commencement speaker spoke of the need to have students move forward in their education at MHEC. What else? What other information do you have other than, of course, we are very clear, I think, on the workforce need, but what other things?
It's my understanding that because I'm newer at the campus, an advisory board was put together, and then I'd interviewed some of our alumni and talked to some of our alumni from interior design circles. We also have several folks who serve on our board that are four architects and / interior design. I think 4 right on our board. Yeah, and the largest firm, one of the largest firms in the country, with the principal founders on our board, is Spouse actually. So we have a lot of deep connection with the architecture and interior design community. I was at a meeting with folks at the design high school, just serendipitously. We did a tour there, and a large majority of the people that were in the tour were MHEC grads who were interior designers who were there. One of them serves on the board with design high school, and they were, frankly thrilled that MHEC was, looking to reinstitute this. And these are folks that have tentacles all through the kind of interior design community in the region. they know that we will deliver, to the point of our speaker last week, they know that we will deliver a different, not a better, but a different kind of set of outcomes with the sort of students that we'll educate at MHEC. There will always be some overlap because these programs have to have some required competencies, but fundamentally there will be different sets of competencies as well that students will graduate with from our institution. It offers a different kind of persona into the workforce mix here. And to our colleague's point, there's some of their specializations that they're generating are very much mission based. Of course, they would be connected to health and safety in the construction management fields. That's exactly what I'd expect them to be putting placements. We will have more firm-based folks, more independent entrepreneurs graduating from the kind of program that we offer. It will really be even a different slant in the kind of placements and co-op experiences that our students will have. It's not that there will never be overlap with somebody from their institution being an entrepreneur and somebody from our institution working in construction management, but oftentimes the kind of students that we have and the kind of students that they have will go in some different directions. And I think that flavor is really great for the state. I think that's a benefit in my view, to have those kind of well-rounded differentiators and kind of postgraduate outcomes, of our students. Speaks to the diversity and character of our education in related fields. That's all positive in my view. So.
Thank you. And then one final question
Of
for
course.
Morgan. Thank you. Regarding those students who have completed the program or either in the pipeline, do you get feedback once they're graduated, once they're working, about the types of things they wish they had, didn't have, or feedback in general? Did you speak to that
Great question.
briefly?
We get a lot of
Briefly.
feedback from
Thank you.
our students, yeah.
Mhm.
We have, School of Architecture and Planning has a formalized exit survey that every graduate takes, both undergraduate and graduate. So we get immediate feedback before they cross the stage
Yes.
and participate in commencement. And then because our program is still so young, we're still very much connected with our recent graduates. They, without exception, they are we have one who went to California, and all the rest are here in Maryland working in the industry in some capacity. So they come to school, they participate as tutors and mentors to our students, they come to our special events. They're involved in the American Society of Interior Designers and the IIDA. These are professional organizations for interior design here with us, so they've become colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you.
I believe Commissioner Howe has a question, but before we get there, I just wanted to clarify one thing you said, Dr. Barker. You were talking about the design school. You're talking about the Baltimore Design School, the local public high school here in Baltimore City.
That's correct.
Where you do recruiting.
We do recruiting there. Yeah, that's where we have many of our students that we have caps. We can't support all the students there, but we have a handful of students that we bring in. We work deeply with them on the portfolios. We don't accept anybody in our institution that doesn't meet the requirements because we don't accept them up to fail. But we put intensive time, and that's what I'm saying. An open admissions program versus a very portfolio dependent program with a high bar for competencies. We want to address diversity needs, but we also want to set them up to be successful in our rigorous kind of art and design environment. Because if you can't cut it in drawing 1 and 2, you can't make it through the curriculum. So, but we invest intensive time and energy into those students we do admit. But that's what I'm saying, just in terms of the gross volume of students we can admit, we could never compete with Morgan State in an open admissions environment because of the nature of the rigor of the arts curriculum. It just would not work. We would set people up to fail. And I think that's a really important, we talk about caps, it's a really important ceiling for us because the labor intense nature of our curriculum and our admissions requirements would not allow us to grow ad infinitum. And it's just the studio-based frame and that intense fine arts rigor, it's tough for us to support an open admissions or a high volume admission strategy. We just couldn't do it. So that's back to the gentleman's question that you asked earlier, really speaks to our ceiling in terms of our growth. That's why I think there's plenty of room here, folks.
I just wanted to add something. We also have an existing relationship with BDC. One of our faculty members has been working with BDC for about 3 years, where we actually go out and there's a mentorship program. They actually come to Morgan, see what architects' plans as well.
This is that same high school, BD, Baltimore Design School. Okay.
And they come and actually visit Morgan. They see what we're doing. They're exposed to all the disciplines we have there. So we also have been trying to recruit from the school, and this is a long-term thing. We have done it before also, but recently this faculty member has started a mentorship program where they come.
That's fantastic. I wish every institution would be recruiting Baltimore City schools, so good for you both. Commissioner Howard.
Just a very quick question. Do most of the incoming students come directly out of high school, or are they already in college someplace? Have they gotten out into the workforce in some other occupation and they want to increase their skills and get into this area? So I wondered what is the average age at each institution of the student?
In the interior design program at Morgan State, it's very diverse. We have students who are fresh out of the Baltimore Design School who are majoring in interior design, and we have grandmothers who are majoring in interior design. So it's very diverse age-wise, and it's, I would say, because we have so many students transferring into the third year, every year our demographic shifts very rapidly. So the majority of the students coming from the community colleges are career changers, and then our first year entry freshmen, the majority of them tend to be straight out of high school.
So I would say that on average in the School of Architecture, the students are probably a little bit older than, say, the students in the School of Business. It's a little bit over the early college age.
I would expect this program to have an average age of 25 to 27. That's typically kind of the age range for these types of programs. So you'd have probably it'd be a third. You'd have a third entering first time in college or transferred. You'd have a third to, in that kind of middle range, and a third early 30s. That's you might with a career changers. So my guess is most of these hybrid low residency programs tend to be that 25 to 28 range, somewhere in there. And that's what makes this program unique for Micah, and a great sort of opportunity for us to stretch our boundaries some, because our traditional college age students right out of high school, our traditional profile is 18 to 19. So that's what makes this unique for us, and part of our financial strategy and our plan to diversify. And our online, our online programs through our open studies programs are all in that age group.
Other questions?
Hi, this is Commissioner Tabor Thalen. Can you share a little bit about the projected graduate per year in the next 3 to 5 years? I'm sorry if I missed that previously.
Go ahead.
So we just graduate. We're going to graduate 22 students this year. We are anticipating having the same number next year, and then the year after, we're going to go up to 27. This year we have our largest class ever. We have 103 total interior design majors, and we've accepted more than a dozen transfer students already for the fall semester. And based on projected enrollment rates, we're anticipating having 55 to 60 incoming freshmen.
And thank you. I'm sorry, that was a question for Mike as well. I did see the projections on the slide.
Well, it's not a program we have running right now. So
Clearly.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look in our original program proposal to the P&L in the original
But
material.
typically you don't expect more than 15 in the first year.
That's right. We sort of end up, most of our programs, when we do our profit and loss statements, tend to go up to basically a 40 steady state. So
So he
15,
capped at 40.
40 to 50 is usually our steady state for our studio programs. So that would be where to be capped. You know, or right around. So usually a 4-year P&L, you take a 15 to 40-ish in a steady state for a studio-based program.
Any other questions, Commissioner Tabor-Stalen?
Thank you so much. And just a question for all of our learning, and no worries if it's a rough estimate. I'd love to hear from each team about how much time have you spent on this process, the program duplication process?
Oh my goodness. It's really hard to tell you because you wouldn't believe me. But because not just for this proposal or anything, but just in general at Morgan, I'm the person who submits helps our department submit their programs to MHEC. So when we submit new programs to MHEC, I make sure that they have done the program duplication analysis in-house. I'm not going to let them submit a program proposal that we have not already done our own duplication analysis of, and I mean the side-by-side and everything. So that takes, usually they do something first and submit to me, which takes, I don't know how long it takes them, but then it might take me a couple of hours to go back over what they've done because I just don't trust them. So I gotta check for myself. So we do that. And then even then when we have an objection like this, there's back and forth with the team. I've been with this team for a few weeks now as we work through what we see there, what they think and what I think about what they think and how best to present it. So I want to say one thing that is really important, I think, for the commissioners, just kind of in a general place, is about the idea of collaboration. To me, collaboration is an upfront thing. You know, so the new rule may help with that, with the 60-day notice, at least for those PhD programs and things. But so like if someone comes to you after a proposal's done to say let's collaborate, that doesn't seem like collaboration. So you have to collaborate at the beginning. Like I have an idea, there's something I want to do. Are you all interested in joining me? Can we do something together? That's collaboration. So after the fact, getting it, there's not a chance to collaborate because you already have a finished item rather than having some teamwork to come together in items. I like their ideas that we maybe have some elective courses that we could collaborate on going forward because we can sit down and do that from the start. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to kind of touch bases on is this idea of growth and academic rigor, because I know that Morgan is not without our flaws. But in terms of one thing that Morgan has done well through the pandemic and even more recently, we see in the state of Maryland, we're one of the few institutions that has had sustained growth throughout this time. And part of that is due to our reputation among our instructors and teachers that are committed to the students' experience. And not all of them are committed probably, but a good portion of our permanent people are truly committed to bringing the students up to a new place from where they started. So I do think that we do have a lot of academic rigor in our programs, despite our broad open access entry. So I just wanted to say those two things.
Other questions?
So did you want me to answer, or did you want us to answer the
Oh,
time?
yes, I'm sorry.
Real quick.
So I did want to say that I was with President Morgan early in my tenure. I've been at the college 17 months now. And early in my tenure, we were talking about collaboration. And,
Dr. Wilson, the president.
yeah, Dr. Wilson. And at the time, I didn't know that interior design was on our docket, but I did ask Dr. Wilson where we could collaborate with one another. And the point of our meeting was over some residential hall space that he wanted to use. And then we got into programs, and he suggested business because he didn't think that we had a business at our college. And I said, are you sure there's nothing else? So it didn't come up in that. We didn't, we were not there at the beginning of this process when the BDES came through, and it's actually been 4.5 years in the making. We were to MHEC before. We did put the program through, and then we pulled it off without objection to ask for a waiver related to faculty. It went back on, and that's why we got the objection. So on campus, we had a 18-month process to which it takes us to get through, to do all the feasibility studies, get through our academic affairs, to make sure that this is where we want to place our money and to take the least amount of risk. And then beyond that, there has been many hours, I don't know how many hours.
It's probably 3 to 4, real specifically, probably 3 to 4 days of work to write the 2 proposal responses and to deal with the back and forth. So a good week of work over a period of about 3 months. But the president's right. We came in about a year ago. I've been there 11 months, and I was asked to take on an interim role in program development, give them some of my background, and so we moved this through. It came to my attention there were no objections the first time around, so we're not sure why the objections were levied the second time around on a waiver request, and that's been puzzled us. But nonetheless, we followed the rules and regulations of the process. We've made our recommendations in response to the objections, and because we weren't here at the onset of the conversations around the process, we entered in a request for collaboration when we got engaged in the process, which was in the last 2 or 3 months. So I want to make sure for the record that that's clear. I also want to make clear that the conversations around rigor around the portfolio are not a function about any criticism for Morgan State's open access strategy. We all know Morgan does a remarkable job in the work that they do. It's more about being a limiter on us in terms of unlimited enrollment growth, because of the way our model of our curriculum and the requirements and credentialing of our students, whether it's a BDES or a BFA, have certain stipulations that limit the amount of students we can bring into our program. So I want to make sure that that's really clear. And to the request clarification, Dr. Dow found the projections. The projections are in the mid to high 20s. The 2 proposals I've recently done put that P&L estimate around 40. So my guess is when the program is mature, it's going to be somewhere between 30 and 40 students, because that's pretty standard for how we sort of operate our kind of studio-based major programs. There's very few programs that exceed that. So
Okay.
hopefully that answers all the questions. Yeah.
And with respect to market demand, this is from Dr. Rye's letter. This is for Dr. Rye or Dr. Dow. The Maryland Department of Labor projects the state will need 1,489 new interior designers by 2038. As Vice Chair Ivor said before, about 139 new positions. Just want to make sure this has been a problem in the past. It's a dueling sets of data, so everybody agrees that's the data. Okay. Other questions from our commissioners online, if any?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, question for you, whether it's appropriate for us to ask Secretary Rye or Dr. Dow to just briefly summarize their position in their letter. I know that it's been written, but with the new process, I think it's very relevant when we focus on the 2 key questions in front of us.
Sure.
Secretary Rye, you want me to take the lead on that? Great. I think really we hinge on, is there a reason to have 2 concurrent programs running to meet that state need? And after discussions with both institutions, we think that there is potential opportunity for collaboration. We do recognize MICA's unique contribution to the state as a art school, as well as Morgan's, national recognition and pull with their School of Architecture. So we see the strengths of both schools, and we see that there's opportunity for the 2 schools to collaborate. We don't think that the proposal as it stands right now is distinct enough to justify a second program here in Maryland. Another kind of compelling reason for us making the decision is Morgan's expectation to grow. We want to give Morgan the opportunity to recruit, to expand, and so we see that as an opportunity that if we did allow MICA to implement, Morgan, wouldn't necessarily be able to have that opportunity to provide that resource to the state.
One thing I will add from, which was also part of our conversation, Morgan's program is still new, still growing because of COVID 2018, and then COVID came, and then they're trying to grow their program at this point. So that was also part of our consideration to give them a little bit more time and see where it goes, then think about other things.
If I can add one more thing, with the change in the language in state law, our focus is now on harm to the student or the state. And in our decision, we focused on harm to the state, and particularly the duplication or the redundancy of using state funds to support our institutions and ultimately support programs. And so we lean on that heavily around harm to the state and that redundant use of state funds in terms of institutional operations and the program proposed here at hand. That is a shift, and it has been hard, I think, for us to kind of mentally shift. The previous language was harm to an institution, and so we've had to kind of think through harm to the state or student in a different way than how we've thought about harm in the past. So I do just want to explicitly say that out loud because of that language shift in the statute.
May I ask a question about the use of state funds? Because I believe I heard President McCormick say, and I read in some of the submissions, I think it was a submission from Mr. Power at MHEC after your decision, that actually no state funds are going to be used for this proposed MICA program. Is that right?
That's right. And the Selinger program, I mean, we already have an annual certification for that. And what we use that program, we do use that program for scholarships, but it's in our typical undergraduate programs. And that's what we're using for. But I feel like that is that's one process. This is another process for academic program. And I don't think the two come together. I think that it's separate processes. So I wasn't really sure why that was a part of this, because I think it just conflates two issues.
But just to be clear, you're now saying for the record that no Selinger funds will be used even for scholarships for this program.
No.
I mean, that's what Mr. Power said in his submission.
This program will be offered through a different division of the college. It doesn't receive Selinger funds. It's an adult learning division called Open Studies Continuing Ed kind of framework. And those students basically get institutional dollars only for their scholarship,
that are from
donors. We really don't, to some degree, we don't have the same scholarship model for those folks who first going to college from our transfer students. So it's really a different financial structure altogether. And if that's what hinges on harm to the state, it falls apart because there's no relationship to this program, those dollars. And not to mention, it's a separate process with separate criteria. So if we're judging our workforce, it's a different conversation, right?
So when you were speaking, I'm sorry, do you want to add something?
I want to know, it was really to the other points. I was going to say that I think Micah put in a proposal maybe a month or two ago about something related to the arts area, like a swan animation or something like that. So recently they had a program proposal put through there. And there was a particular from the department, that department, which is in a different school, about whether or not they wanted to object. And I was like, and looking at that, given Micah's tradition in the arts, this is not a space that I felt that they should touch, that we should touch, that we should not object to that program. So the idea that we objected to this program is related to the fact that our School of Architecture had come back in and this program was seeing this momentum, as Secretary Wright mentioned, that is almost like a new program, even though it started in 2018, that we really want the time, and we're seeking accreditation from the national organizations this coming spring. So we would, we feel that time for our program to get that established is important. So it's not an indefinite objection to what Micah wants to do. it's, maybe more of a delayed objection, an objection definitely to delay because of what we see is happening in our space.
Okay. I want to just quickly just ask a couple questions about this. Oh, Commissioner, sorry, I would like to go last. Commissioner Williams and then Commissioner Vance.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Thank you so much for the exchange. I'd like to hear again from Dr. Dow in reflection on what Micah has indicated, that no state funds will be used in the program, and if that at all influences what was hinged upon the MHEC decision.
Sure. So if our AGs can correct me if I get this wrong, Micah our private and independent institutions could technically still run a program without the secretary's recommendation for implementation. The risk in doing that, and I was just trying to find the statutory language, the risk in doing that is that it could impact their Sellinger funding. And so that is my understanding of Sellinger funds. And so I'm turning to our AGs to confirm. And so that's why we pull in that consideration. So hearing that, Sellinger funding is not necessarily going to be used, at least, verbally sharing that, I feel like we would want a bit more confirmation on that. But I think that would be my response to that question.
Assistant Attorney General, anything you wanted to add?
Without research, no.
All right, I just wanted to give you a floor.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I would definitely want to look that up first before I would just give an off the cuff answer.
Fair enough. Commissioner Williams, any other questions before we go to Commissioner Vance?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Vance? I think you might be on mute.
Sorry. A special thank you to the representatives from Morgan State and from MHEC today, giving us additional information. That's been very helpful. This question is specifically for Micah. I noted when MSU was presenting information about seeking accreditation for their program. Do you have plans as well to seek accreditation should you be granted approval for this program?
Yes, eventually we will. It won't be the highest priority, to be frank. A lot of interior design programs don't all. Of course, it lends a level of credibility. Our first order of business will be, hiring the faculty and getting the program stood up and getting an advisory board. My sense is we'd be situating ourselves for accreditation at year 3 or 4, and then move from there. We're also looking at our reaccreditation for NACID, which is an art and design accreditation. It might be a little higher priority for us right now. We let that lapse during COVID, and that really many art and design schools had a hard time kind of managing those assessment expectations. And so we're looking at that as sort of a higher order, first order of business institutionally, and then we would move to specialized accreditation, re-up, renewal, or pursuing it for a new program downstream. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions, Commissioner Vance?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
I have a couple of last questions. One gets to this issue of harm to the state with respect to use of state resources. That is an important part of our legal inquiry. This is from Micah. When you two, Dr. Barkley and President McCormick, were speaking before, you talked about when you arrived, well, relatively recently on campus, you were talking about how best to use your money. Again, you were talking about private money, not state money. And my understanding, based on your voluminous written materials as well as your presentation today, is that you're trying to figure out how to position yourself as a nationally ranked art school, basically to survive in today's post-COVID economy.
Yeah, I would say that, but we're also, I mean, part of our mission is to thrive with Baltimore. So we can never forget Baltimore, and we can never forget Maryland. And
Sure.
so many of our alums as well as our students do come from the
For
area
sure.
and region. And that's really important to me. And you know, the national recognition is one thing, but we are here in this state.
And when you were saying you really perceive your competition as like Parsons or Savannah College of Art and Design, I guess this is a question for Morgan. When you lose students to your existing program, where do you lose them to? Do you know?
We hardly ever lose them.
Oh, that's
They
really
visit SCAD
Yeah.
and then they come to study with us.
Okay.
They go to Parsons, and for the value, the dollar value of the cost of those schools versus the quality of the education, the HBCU experience, our spectacular campus with all its nationally and internationally designed award-winning buildings, our materials library, our lighting laboratory, our Bear Lab, our fabrication lab, which has almost the same amount of equipment as MIT. They're like, this is hands down the best deal in the country, and they come to us. And then they meet me, and I give them a hard sell. It's
a fantastic program.
It's a
Clearly.
fantastic program.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in all seriousness, where we lose our students is people with young families who just like, you know, I can't do the full-time thing now. And that's when we direct them to Anne Arundel, Montgomery, or
Sure.
CCBC. So there is a factor of students not coming.
Sure. This is really I'm trying to get to the overlap and the collaboration. I think you had in your materials, you mentioned an analysis that over the past 2 years, I think there were 3 students who were admitted to MICA who ended up at Morgan. Are there students who begin an undergraduate program in the arts architecture realm at one of your programs and then go get a graduate program in the other school?
Yes, we have someone who just graduated with her Bachelor of Science in Interior Design degree and was happily accepted into MICA's social
Innovation or social design
master's degree.
Because, and I noticed in the materials that there's, I can't remember who said it, but there's a long history of collaboration.
Dr. Wilson said that.
So my last question is particularly about this particular degree, the BDES. I think I read in the materials that it's somewhat of a new cutting edge program among art schools. Can you talk a little bit more about the history of it, how many there are out there?
Yeah, BDES, Bachelor's Design, I use Carnegie as an example. It's really rooted in more of an applied frame. And those of you who may have heard words like design thinking, it's more about constructing, sort of putting people-centered. So it comes out of some of the UX, user interaction, and user design fields. So that's sort of permeated the degree kind of focus, which is we really orient it towards a design thinking frame where you're considering issues of empathy, innovation, place, and really take a UX mode. And so our recent program that just went through on design innovation, that very much is kind of the impetus of that whole curriculum that got just recently approved here at MHEC. And this is sort of an extension of that. But it also allows us to encapsulate some of those BFA tenets without necessarily going all the way. And so it still requires kind of core, strong, distributed fine arts competencies without, because what could happen is all of a sudden you end up with a BA, right? Or a Bachelor of Architecture. And that's not what we really want to do. We want to keep those fine arts competencies in place, but lower the threshold some, right? And so it's a way for art schools to kind of walk the line a little bit between the traditional bachelor's and a BFA, but keeping that kind of user-focused emphasis along with some of those key constellations of excellence around their fine arts disciplines. So in our case, decorative arts and textiles and all those things really come to play here.
So is a BDES something that is, I mean, I am not artistic, so forgive me, but is a BDES something that a degree seeker would be seeking out?
That's sort of the
like do SCAD and Parsons have that?
Yes. Carnegie Mellon has it. Parsons, a lot of the schools have BDESs, they've got, it's kind of, it's becoming more of a common nomenclature in the sector. Yeah.
The distributive requirements may look a little bit different for a BDES than an MHEC or a BFA.
Right.
So we make sure that we can pull from a lot of different fields into the applied design field.
Okay. That's helpful.
Here, yeah, so I can just add, in regulations, we do have distinctions between a variety of different degrees. We do not make a distinction between on a regulatory front, between a BDES, a BFA, a BS, a BA. So I just want to put that out there.
And so as a result, I guess the extension would be you can't apply an assessment of that. But there are I've tried to show there are fundamental differences between the distributed expectations of a BDES, ARC, or a BA, or a BS, and the disciplines we talked about here.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just so I understand in layperson's terms, so when you say there's no distinction in regulation, is it fair to say you don't, as an agency, parse it that finely?
Correct. Correct.
But there could be differences, you haven't done that in your analysis.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It creates distinctiveness and it creates less duplication. That's what
Okay, but it's not in the required regulatory evaluation.
Correct.
Okay.
Judge.
Yes, Judge Howe.
All right, so I have two concerns, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I don't feel as though I have enough information to make an intelligent vote here. First is whether or not state resources are going to be used, because I find that very confusing that we don't know that for sure. And the second thing is that there has been no discussion between these two institutions yet, apparently, about collaboration, although there was some kind of a reach out to try to have that discussion. But I think that's an important discussion to have before we entertain any kind of a vote here. So I would be moving to postpone the vote on this issue.
I think on the first point, and I will ask Micah to speak to this, I think, Micah, it would be helpful if you could clarify whether state resources will be used. I think what we were looking up in the room was sort of the implications for the legal analysis and why the agency, how that impacts their analysis with respect to state farm. But Micah, if you could clarify for the record the whether or not state resources will be used in this proposed BDES program.
So they've never been used in the past for the programs that run out of the college where we're running this. Open Studies, which is adult programs, it's programs online, it's programs that are at the master's level. Okay, they do not fall under the Sellinger funding. We have not included, we include full-time students, full-time resident students in that calculation. And, you know, in fact, the calculation has been changed over just the last year where the master students were left out. So that would be a lot of the students in this area, and these students would not be counted in that. So they're not counted now, and they won't be counted in the future.
So again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you saying no state resources will be used in this program?
No Sellinger funds, which is what we
Which
get.
is the
from
only state resource you get.
Yeah, that's the only state resource we get. They are the funds, and they do not apply to these students.
So I think the first point has been addressed, but Judge Howe, I hear you on the second point. What other information would you like to hear about collaboration, Commissioner Howe?
Well, if the two institutions have not even had a discussion about whether or not there's a possibility that they could have a collaboration is very concerning to me. And the fact that the recommendation took into account the use of state funds, I'm wondering if a further analysis, my Dr. Dow and Dr. Rye would come to a different conclusion and recommendation. I'm very concerned about this.
Can you each go ahead?
So actually, this is actually a procedural question. This is
Our lawyers are right over there.
Yeah, so, you know, especially the committee of these information. So usually we've got these standalone meetings where literally we would meet directly afterward and begin at least our deliberations.
Well, now it's all in public.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right now.
Yes, that's number one. But number two, I guess, for what our fellow commissioner just said, procedurally, how would we proceed if we did want to have some time for some additional? I just not experienced that during my time.
I will turn it over to our Assistant Attorney General.
So is that what you all are deciding?
It was a question of if we did decide that, how would it happen? So if that would help us decide, I think.
You would have to table this. I don't know what you would have to decide what additional information you would want. And then you're going to have to table your decision to get additional information.
Mhm.
I guess you've gotten all you need from them. What other additional information is it that you want?
And then let me say one last question, which is, and then to do our actual decision vote,
You have to do it
back in the public session.
Yes.
For sure.
For sure to do that.
Yes.
Again, this is our first time doing this, so we want to be sure we are procedurally correct here. So that's why I want to make that transparent.
Good question. Good question.
Yeah.
So just hearing that, so if we do want to decide that, I just want to lay out what that process was going to be.
Well, it sounds like Commissioner Howe would like to know whether the agency, the Secretary and Dr. Dowd, would change its analysis based on knowing that no state money will be used. Is that right, Commissioner Howe?
That's absolutely correct.
And then it sounds like you also would like more information about whether further collaboration is possible. There was some material that we were provided about some emails back and forth, but it sounds like a meeting never actually happened. So you'd want the information to be provided by the institution?
Yes, I would like to have, well, either they're going to try to collaborate or they're not, but I would like to know what their intention is. And if they can have a productive conversation about collaboration, I think that would be very helpful for us in making a decision.
Well, maybe Morgan and Micah, you could speak to the collaboration piece to the extent it exists right now. And we'll see if we need further information.
Okay, I don't remember the exact dates of requests about collaboration came. My thought is I believe it was late in April or in April. Do you have a date on?
From the Secretary.
Yeah, it came from the Secretary's office. I know that you can control the date. One thing about it is potentially the timing of the request.
Yeah, so if I may, so as part of our process with Secretary Rye, we meet with both institutions. In those discussions, there was interest for collaboration, particularly from Micah and from Morgan. So we do have a timeline to make a decision. Micah was gracious enough to already give us an extension to the decision date. So admittedly, this was maybe about a week before our decision date. Micah said, yes, we'd be open to a conversation. We emailed Morgan, said, let's try to get a conversation on the books. And at least from my perspective, just timing didn't allow for that. Micah was ready to just kind of get a decision out there. And again, admittedly, they had already given us a very gracious extension to make a decision. And so here we are. So short amount of time, hard to schedule it. Micah was ready to move on. And I'm sorry if I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, I think that comports with the email exchange that's part of the record here.
Yeah.
That there were emails sent around starting on Monday, March 24th, but the decision date was that Friday, March 20th.
Correct.
Okay. Morgan or Micah, anything you want to add about collaboration, interest, and discussions? It's open to both.
It's open to the school.
There is a great need for advanced education in interior design to meet the needs of our metropolitan region, to increase the capacity of research and development, to increase design excellence and aesthetics for our community. So any conversation about any collaboration about expanding the profession of interior design is would be most welcome.
And Micah?
Yeah, I think I was hearing that that's at the graduate level. So is what you're saying. Correct?
No, you don't make that assumption, please.
Okay. All right.
So you're talking about the undergraduate level as well.
I'm talking about research and development and what the local profession needs here and now. And that can be accomplished at a two-year degree institution, at a four-year institution, or at a postgraduate level.
So what would you like to say?
So we're not a research school, so research and development probably would not be where we could make the best inroads. But what I would say is that post this decision, we'd be happy to do some collaboration, and we haven't done it because of the distinctiveness of the program. Like I said, we did. I think there were 2 occasions when we actually reached out, and I know that's in the record somewhere, and they didn't come to fruition. So at this point, we have delayed the start of this program many times because of the fact that we're trying to bring students into it. So we've delayed it, and it seems a bit prejudicial at this point if we continue to push it into the future. With that said, I mean, we would like to go back to the table with them. It's just that I don't see the opportunity right now. It hasn't.
All right, Commissioner Howe, I know they were trying to address your concerns. Do you have any comments for them?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I would say that I think
Well,
that to hear.
Because I feel that I'm not totally prepared in order to make an educated and proper decision, if you take a vote today, I will abstain.
Okay. Sorry, Dr. Keys was speaking right at the same time.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to say is I think that we can't, I don't think that this is a short discussion, like in 3 days, have a discussion and come back to us 4 days later with an answer. That's probably not going to work. I think that Morgan is willing to have a discussion that starts with how else can we redesign the proposal. I mean, if they don't want to redesign the proposal, period, then we can't. Then it's hard to say that it would be fruitful, like you're saying. But if it's sort of like, well, we're interested in doing something, how can we redesign our proposal? What can we talk about together? And we're willing to do that. And I would say that that would be a conversation that we should have with many people in the room that are down the road for us to try to move in that direction first. And so either I'm in agreement with the president here that we move forward on a decision today, or we set something in a couple of weeks time to, come together and spend some time together on it. Not just a phone conversation and not just a Zoom conversation, but some and
break bread.
Yeah, break bread together. Break bread together.
All right. I know, Commissioner, how you were saying if we were to come to a vote today, you would abstain. Is that right? Did I hear you correctly?
That's correct. And I also have concern about for clarification of state funding, which has not, to my satisfaction, been satisfied, because it was part of the decision of Dr. Dow and Dr. Rye to make the recommendation that they've made, that there would be state funds used, and whether they would reconsider their decision and recommendation based on additional information.
So, not to put you on the spot, but it seems that was information that was not known at the time of your mid-March letter, correct? Would that potentially change your decision?
I just don't feel that I have enough information and how it factored into the decision that was made by Dr. Ryan and Dr. Dow.
Yeah, so I think, yes, that would be helpful information. Admittedly, we did not necessarily ask that as a question, so I do want to give, in full transparency. Harm to the state is a fairly new concept here. Mm-hmm. And thinking through the use of resources, while it's helpful to have MHEC say explicitly right here, right now, that this program would not use state resources, again, I think we would want to include that in a decision letter. I would want us to be a bit more thoughtful. So it is hard to kind of respond on the spot, but that is where my logic goes is, okay, if we have that in confirmation, then we need to put that in writing. We need to be very clear about it and clear on the expectation. I then also, we spend a lot of time internally thinking through especially since the House Bill 1244 change in language, what is harm to the state or harm to students? And again, in this instance, we have focused heavily on harm to state. In the absence of thinking about the use of public funds, we kind of stop there. So I say that out loud to say, it's not that that is not the only harm to the state. It is that we have not conceptualized additional harms to the state, particularly in a broader philosophical approach. In this instance, that is where we have landed. Harm to the state is around use of state funds, but I don't want people to walk away from this discussion thinking that that is the only possibility of harm to the state. That is the possibility that we have conceptualized for this proposal.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I just want to ask a question about that. I will say I understood the rationale when I read it, but so again, let me just make a hypothetical, which is always dangerous to do, but let me ask it. And let me just take a field that I think most of us will concede has a lot of demand. Take cybersecurity, almost infinite demand. If we had two institutions that both receive public funding that would kind of create a program in cybersecurity, we would not necessarily say that it's harmful to the state, because we would say we're adding capacity for a profession that has economic demand. So yes, two institutions like receiving public dollars, but they're doing a thing that has economic demand. We would well, let me state that. Per the framework that you all came up with, would I be correct in that hypothetical that I just gave?
So yes, and then thinking through, are we, again, duplicating the use of state resources? So let's just take hiring of faculty. Could there be an opportunity to share faculty instead of duplicating specialized faculty at two different institutions, paying a salary at two different institutions? So that's where we get into the collaboration. Do they need, in the context of cybersecurity, we're talking a lot about cyber ranges and physical resources. Would we need state dollars to pay for two of those physical resources, or could there be collaboration? So that's where we go with the yes, and the two programs could coexist, but how are our state resources best utilized to meet the demand?
So again, just the example you give is a good one. I think healthcare, we have dealt with this in terms of specialized faculty. There are only so many resources. I haven't seen the example of that in terms of where you have bespoke resources that you can't share that are from what I hear in terms of the online program with the faculty. I haven't heard that from either institution, that recruiting of faculty or use of clinical settings, for example, which we have had much. I haven't heard those dynamics here. What I'm going to say a thing that's going to sound it's going to sound as if I'm trivializing the work. It's not. Try to trust me, you all. I don't know if that's material, because I think the bigger question is here. What's the need of the state? What's the capacity of folks to provide? And that's not to decide either way, but I'm trying to, at least from my analysis, figure out what is actually material. If we say there's a need, again, if we have something that we said there's a need for, I'll pay as many people as I have to with state resources to do that thing, because the state needs it, because that's in the best interest of the state.
Right.
I think that's what any of us would say rationally. So this is less for a response. I'm thinking about my fellow commissioners than I think about my analysis. I come back to what does the state need, and then how do we provide that? And candidly, as long as I'm not interfering with one institution, except for another institution doing that. That's what I'm trying to wrestle with right now, candidly. And so
yeah, I think all good points. Certainly workforce need is an important factor, but then competition for students. Workforce needs. Do we have a student pool available? Is there competition for students, and is there harm to an institution that already has a program? So that's one thing. The other is we need more, I guess, advice from our AAG on this. When you say that an institution will not use state funds, but if a student, if an institution receives state funds, and say we will we receive student funds, but we will not use it here, we will use it here. What does it mean? Institution received the state fund. So state funds are supporting the institution. Any institution can come and say, okay, that's very good, we will receive state funds, but for these programs, we will not use it. So that is, I'm not saying that I have made up my mind on this, but I certainly need AAG advice, what does it mean? I think Dr. Rao is correct. If institution says we will not receive state funds, period, then you don't have to go through this process.
If I may say, the amount of cylinder funds which we're happy to receive is only about 3 to 4% of our budget overall. So, we're talking about $4 million is what we received. We put 85% of that into student scholarships for full-time students at the undergraduate level. Never have these funds gone toward open studies programs, which is where we are running this. And they will not in the future, just because of the way that we must certify the funds. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. As far as harm to the state, I think the absence of MHEC running a program like this and the differentiation and the type of way that we would run a program, it will be harm to the state if we don't do it. And yeah, there is time for collaboration later, but we have no more time to wait for a decision on this because we've waited a very long time. We followed the process and we've tried to get to a place where, we're offering something that can be differentiated and distinct. And by the way, it is our mission. And I think that all is very important to think about.
So, President, I'm not disagreeing with that. All I'm saying is that use of state resources, what does it mean? And legally where we stand, we need our AAG's opinion on that.
I understand.
It's not that 3% or whatever it is, we need a legal opinion.
All right.
Chair Motz, if I
Yes.
may, I have finally found the reference that I had indicated, and I apologize, I need to correct myself. It's not in statute, it's in regulation. And as I said before, because MICA is a private and independent institution, they do have the capacity to run a program that is goes against the NOM recommendation. So let me read the exact language. For the purposes of the record, it's POMAR 13B020303, Section G. If an independent institution has implemented a new program or substantial modification to an existing program, contrary to the non-recommendation of the commission that was based on a finding of unreasonable or unnecessary duplication, the commission may recommend that the General Assembly reduce the institution's appropriation by the amount of aid associated with the full-time equivalent enrollment in that program.
Right. So what that's saying is if this commission voted this proposal down and MICA decided to do it anyway, they might lose their salary money.
Right.
I don't think anybody's suggesting that is what's going to happen.
But that is the implication
Yeah.
of
Right.
thinking about state resources and the connection
Understood.
between program approval and.
The Salinger money is the hook
Yeah.
to give this commission the opportunity to weigh in on program approval.
Correct.
Okay.
Chair, might I ask just one
Yeah.
clarifying question? For us, I think it's been difficult to understand the preponderance of evidence requirement. So in essence, it's our understanding the stipulations are labor, demand, and competitive overlap. And FAR and mission, right? It seemed to be the kind of primary differentiating factors in the decisioning in terms of the scope of decision. And as we understood the requirements of the proposal and the response. So there's been a preponderance of evidence showing that the labor market gap's there, a preponderance of evidence showing the competitive overlap isn't there, and a preponderance of evidence showing precedent with this type of program and current assets. I'm trying to see, to Dr. Dow's question, the comment that concerns me is if we had more time, we could maybe think about other conceptual reasons why we might say this is harmful for the state. That's what I heard basically just said. And to the commissioner's comment, then what's the bear on the decision? Like, what's the ground rules for the bearing for decision? For me, being new to the state, it's I feel like that's problematic scope creep, in other words.
Well, I understand your position and, you're a good advocate and you think it's obvious that that's the providers, that's for this body to decide. I also think, as the vice chair said, there are some questions about materiality and maybe it just makes sense for us to vote today. So I think, are there any other comments? Commissioner Howe, we understand your position that if there were to be a vote today, you would abstain. Are there any other comments from commissioners before we ask for a motion?
Like a clarifying statement from you, Madam Chair, regarding what it is we're being asked to do. Under the new legislation that was passed, I guess, in 2024. So in the past, if we decided we want to make a decision now for a limited time period and say, if, for example, if we wanted to say to the two parties, look, we are going to deny this application for the time being. Based on what has been presented to us, what we've seen, we're going to turn it down. We're going to support the decision the Secretary has made. However, we would welcome a statement from the two parties 6 months from now regarding how they would change it in a collaborative fashion, which would benefit the state. That would provide incentive for both institutions to engage in collaboration, because in 6 months, if it came back, the implication is that the decision may be different. In the past, we could have had such a decision. We could have made it in secret, and then so now are we in a position where if we want to do something like that, one, can we do it, and two, if we do it, must it is it consistent with the law?
So that is certainly a question for our lawyers. I mean, I would say anything that we used to do in closed session, we could do in open meeting. We could have those transparent conversations. And the legal standard, you're right, it has changed. And because MHEC, the private institution, we're not looking at unnecessary program duplication. We're just looking at unreasonable program duplication, which would cause harm to the state or students attending institutions of higher education in the state. And then so we go through the two-part analysis, the first part being whether the proposed program is in fact duplicative of the existing program. And we look at comparing factors, and they list 6. The degree to be awarded, the area of specialization, the curricula, the purpose and objectives of each program, the competencies gained in the programs, their modalities, and then each program admissions requirements. So then, that tells, we vote on that, discuss that, vote on that, decide if we do think it's duplicative, or if a majority of us do, or a quorum of us, then we go to the second prong, which is determining whether the content duplication is unreasonable, it causes harm to the state or students. And some of the factors that we may consider are, there are 5 factors listed: workforce, misalignment, preserving established programs, use of state resources, impact on existing programs, and collaboration. So to your deeper question about could we do something conditional, I would defer to our Assistant Attorney General, but I would think that we probably could if we could do it before. I don't think the new law changes that in any way. What do you think, Ms. Ward?
No, I mean, you need to decide whether or not you are going to affirm, if you will, the Secretary's decision or reverse it. You do have to do that. So you do have to make a decision on that. And if you're going to affirm it and deny the program, you could certainly attach on to whatever it is you just said, or if you're just going to totally reverse it and allow Michael to go forward with its program. So you have those 2 options, and you could certainly, I don't know, tack something onto that as well, collaboration, whatever. So you do have options in what you're going to do, but you do have to make a decision on what you're going to do with the Secretary's decision. You have to make a decision on that.
Or we could defer it, as Judge Howe suggested. I think to your point, Ms. Ward, if we do want to tack something on, that has to be attached to an actual decision.
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
Okay.
I think we have a question.
Ms. Commissioner Williams.
Yes, a procedural question. Given the change in law, my understanding is that we need a majority of the commissioners for a
The
decision.
majority of the commissioners appointed, which is
Appointed.
7 out of 12, and there are 8 of us here today. Commissioner Serrano had to hop off.
Okay, thank you.
A majority of commissioners to, if it were a majority of commissioners to reverse the secretary's decision. If it's 7-1 or 8-0 to reverse, then it gets reversed. If it's 6-2 or 5-3 or anything less, then the secretary's position stands. I actually clarified this with our lawyers yesterday, and that is correct.
That's correct.
Good question. I had the same one yesterday. Any other questions? All right, do we have any motions? Do we, I mean, I guess, yes.
I move that we affirm the decision of the secretary regarding this matter.
Do we want to have any discussion before we do that of the different prongs? No, okay. All those in favor?
Is there a second?
Second.
There will
was there a
be a
second?
second.
A second.
Okay,
And now discussion.
yeah, you want to have a discussion?
You wanted to go over the prongs or something?
Yeah, the first part is discussing whether it's duplicative. And the prongs for that are the degree to be awarded, the areas of specialization, the curricula, the purpose and objectives of each program, competencies gained, their modalities, and each program's intentions required.
From what I read, I'm going through the materials, looking at the side-by-side analysis and what I heard from the presentations today, there is duplication. It is duplicative of necessity. They are both focusing on interior design, and there are some commonalities there, even though I think the case was made very well of the different foundation for the design program that is being proposed. But there is duplication. I think it is duplicative.
Does anybody else want to talk about the duplication prong? We'll get to the unreasonable duplication prong before the rest of the vote. Anybody else want to talk about duplication? Okay. And then the second prong, whether it's unreasonable duplication that causes harm to the state or students. Workforce, does the new program align with our workforce needs? Does it preserve established programs, use of state resources, impact on existing programs, and collaboration? Anybody have any comments there?
Well, one for me is the impact on existing programs. We have the legislation that speaks directly to this process that we are trying to adhere to and to follow. But we also have a commitment to further the posture, effectiveness, and standing of the HBCUs in the state as well. And what is unclear to me is what impact, and it's hard for anyone to know what impact this new program would have on the enrollment at Morgan. If it were so attractive that a lot of people who would have chosen to go to Morgan or who would have considered Morgan decide that we're going to do this program, and instead of continuing the growth that Morgan has seen over the last 3 or 4 years, saw a reversal of that, then that could affect, that would affect Morgan's program adversely. And it, taken to the extreme, it could go to the point where it was no longer viable and Morgan would lose the program. And then the institution then would have less of a program inventory to serve the state and the region and the nation it has now. And so that would be not just harm to Morgan, but to the state as well. I mean, if that, and I admit that's an extreme case, but we don't know what impact this would have. And so I think that is reason to be cautious in our decision making. So we have multiple objectives that we are obligated to try to serve by law.
I think on the unreasonable point, and sorry if I could cut anyone off. I think Dr. Burnham is right. We don't have a crystal ball. I will say, and I think about this compared to other decisions we've gone through, and the programs were a bit more similar in terms of the students coming in. So I think about physical therapy, which I think that's the first one most of us did. One thing that very much driven how I think about this is what I hear to be the difference in the students, and I particularly have written here, this entry requirement to go to MHEC versus an open enrollment program. Not better or worse, it's different. And so, I'll be candid, that makes me more confident in the difference in the student pools who would apply. The student would do a portfolio. I'm not an art person either. I wouldn't even attempt to do one, but I know it sounds like it would be different than who would apply to Morgan's program just based on the requirements level. And then again, I do come to, when I look at the need, and again, I just do this in my head, it's the math. If we were to double, even triple the amount of students who are graduating from the Morgan program, you still get to invest half, and actually a little less than half of what the state is projected to need by 2032. So at least in where the graduates are going, as well as where the students would be coming in, I am more convinced about how different they are than I've usually been when we have these types of discussions. But anyway, let me stop there.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with what Commissioner Burnham indicated, but particularly I wanted to point out the issue of whether or not there would be harm to the state based on the implementation of the MICA program regarding institutional background of Morgan, given it being a historically Black institution. It's noted in the review by Dr. Dow that this program is unique in the state, the MICA program, and that it would have no impact on the implementation or maintenance of the high demand program. I would say it would. I think that it would over time. It would be harm to Morgan. There'd be some type of hindrance in terms of their opportunity for growth for students.
Thank you. Other comments from the folks on the Zoom with respect to either prong? I think it probably makes sense to, even whichever side you're on before we vote, I think it's good to hear all sides and then we can vote. So with respect to first to duplication and then to unreasonable duplication. Commissioner Tabor-Staley.
Hi, folks. I think I made a similar comment for our last program review, but I just want to say again, I'm so impressed by how both teams are showing up here. You have done a phenomenal job in preparation and answering our questions. And I continue to believe that the heart of the process is deeply flawed in the amount of time required for programs that are quite small or will be quite small. I know in the past we've discussed programs that would impact single digits of students over several years. Here we're talking about double digits annually, but I'd like to use this time to share that for the foreseeable future, I will not be finding any program that impacts only double digits of students a year as unreasonable. I think it is below a threshold. And again, I understand the water you all are swimming in, and that these processes are set up and it's compelling everyone to spend this much time. But since this meeting has started, we have had significantly more students leave our higher education system with debt and no degree. Since this meeting started, not to include all of the many human hours spent on this process. And I would love for us to have a higher bar for what we consider in these program review processes to save the human hours and direct them to issues of access, affordability, completion, and workforce placement. So again, Both teams have done a phenomenal job here. My vote will be that it is not unreasonable, because I will be finding all program duplication, where duplication exists, that is impacting small numbers of students defined as single or double digit students annually, as not being unreasonable.
Thank you, Commissioner Tabor-Stalin. Other comments from folks on Google Meet? Okay. Commissioner Williams, Commissioner Vance, Commissioner Howe, anything you want to say before we vote? No? Okay. Because I am a lawyer, I do like to go through my prongs. And with respect to whether the program proposed by Micah is duplicative of the program that exists at Morgan, I believe that the program proposed by Micah is not duplicative. I think that the audience, the modality, the fact that it's a brand new, relatively new Bachelor's of Design program, I think the curricula are adequately different. And the admissions requirements, which was something new to me today. So thank you for sharing that information. The open admission versus the more competitive portfolio-based admission. To me, they are not duplicative programs. So on the first prong, that's where I stand. And then on the second prong, I guess I don't really need to get to that because I found that they were not duplicative. But I would like to just say that in my mind, the workforce prong weighs heavily on me. That, my understanding is that the data that I shared before, which Dr. Dow confirmed, that we'll need 1,489 by new interior designers by 2032, which breaks down into a demand of 139 new positions per year. Based on the numbers that we've heard today with respect to Morgan graduating 20 per year, maybe getting up as high as 40. Micah said that they're going to be at capped 30 to 40. I think that there is room for both excellent programs. I think they are complementary. I do not think they're competitive. And I think it would harm the students of Maryland not to be able to have the Micah program as something to consider in addition to the great offerings that Morgan already provides. I also think that we are a net exporter of college students. And I do think that the Micah program does draw a national audience from other competitive states, competitive art programs that have been discussed, like Pratt and SCAD and others. And I think that to the extent that we can bring more students to the state, and that, like I said today, 40% of them actually stay in state, adding to Maryland's vibrant art scene, Baltimore City's vibrant art scene, that's all to the good. I think that's a nice feature in addition to providing Maryland's existing students with a complement to what Morgan already provides. So again, I would, my votes are going to be towards, it's not duplicative, and even if it were, it's not unreasonable. Okay, any other comments before we ask for a vote? All right, with respect, I think Commissioner Burnham, you had a motion on the table, which was, I'll let you say it again, sir.
That we affirm the decision of the secretary to deny the program.
All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to ask, does it make sense to just do a roll call this year of the
Yes.
procedure? I believe we've done that before.
Yes.
A roll call vote.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
yeah.
So I should like polling a
Yeah,
jury.
yeah, we'll just name
Put my
it.
lawyer hat back on. All right. Pretend we're polling a jury.
I don't
All
have
right.
any issues afterward.
Excellent. So Commissioner Burnham has voted to affirm the secretary's decision to deny the program. So we know where he stands. Commissioner Thompson, what is your vote?
Yes.
Yes. Commissioner Ugo?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Vance?
Nay.
Commissioner Howe?
No.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Tabor-Stalin?
Nay.
And Commissioner Mott, nay. So I think that's 4-4. Is my math right?
Is that right?
I think no, 5-3.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, 5-3. Good thing I'm not a judge. Okay, so 5-3 to affirm the secretary
No, to overturn.
Affirm the secretary. Yeah. Deny the program.
No,
No.
let's just do it again then.
The
It doesn't
motion was
matter.
to affirm.
To affirm.
So
the
if you said
secretary's
nay, you were saying that
You
you
didn't
did not want
affirm.
to affirm.
Well, let's do, so.
To do it again.
I recommend we do another vote. I
So
think just,
what we're voting
tell
on
her-
is
restate the
affirming the
motion.
secretary and therefore denying the new program, right?
And instead of saying may, just say affirm or reverse. So that
Affirm or
way it's
reverse.
easier.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so when you say affirm, that means you're affirming what the secretary decided, which is that Micah can't have his program.
Right.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Affirm.
Affirm.
Reverse.
Commissioner Ban?
Can you repeat yourself, Commissioner Bennett? I think you're still on mute.
Reverse.
Commissioner Howell?
Reverse.
Commissioner Williams?
Affirm.
Commissioner Taylor?
reverse.
Commissioner Moss, reverse. That's what I thought it was.
5-3.
Yeah, so it's 5-3. 5-3,
Reverse.
to reverse. However, because of the Attorney General's opinion from August of 2023, you need a quorum of all appointed commissioners to change the secretary's position.
Yes.
And there are 12 appointed commissioners, regardless of how many people are here today.
Yes.
So you would need 7 votes to change the secretary's position. Today, we only have 5.
Correct.
So the secretary's position stands.
Correct.
There you have it. Thank you both sides for your incredible hard work. Yeah.
Mr. Williams.
I would like to explain my vote. And that explanation is I would, if it returns and the secretary has additional information with regard to the funding piece that we discussed or other information on collaboration, I would take all of that into consideration on a future vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Anything anybody else has to say? Well, I know it's been said before, but I really wanted to thank both institutions for the amount of time and energy that you put in. Very much for your time today and for the months leading up to this.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Would it make sense to take a quick break?
Yes. We have half an hour more. Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll do what we can from, well, Secretary.
Happy to.
Nice of you.
I thought it was gonna. I didn't eat anything. Well, I did eat
We
It's
have.
all-
two more dogs and some graham crackers and tea this
We have
morning
one.
before I left home.
Wait,
I left
Commissioner
at
Mann, can you do that?
7, so I was like, oh, yeah.
Commissioner Vance, you
Left at
take care.
8:30, so all this time to get here.
Ms. Majors, if you wouldn't mind putting the audio back on, please.
I live in.
Commissioner Williams, can you hear us?
A homeless.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great,
Parkway.
great.
Oh,
Well, we are back. We have 20 more minutes. And we're going to do the most time-sensitive things first. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dow.
Great. Thank you, Chair Motz, and good afternoon, commissioners. Are we officially in afternoon?
Yes.
yes.
So on page 6 of your commission book, you will see a memo outlining proposed amendments to COMAR. These amendments would change the definition of a credit hour. This is long overdue. The federal government changed their regulatory definition over a decade ago. Their definition is a bit more flexible, and we've had a request from several of the institutions to make this change for alignment purposes. You'll see the drafted changes on page 8, which is really just a repeal and replace of our definition with the federal definition. It is in 2 sections of COMAR because we have a section just for out-of-state institutions and their expectations, and then a section for our in-state institutions. I'm happy to answer any questions, but let me read the recommendation in the interim. It is recommended that the commission approve for publication in the Maryland Register the enclosed proposed regulatory amendments. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I copied and pasted and did not correct. I'm so sorry. Approve for publication in the Maryland Register the enclosed proposed regulatory amendments to the appropriate COMAR provisions, specifically COMAR 13B0201.12 and COMAR 13B0202.16. And authorize its Assistant Attorney General to make non-substantive edits to the proposed regulations to stylistic and formatting requirements of AELR and DSD. Happy to answer questions.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And those are those decisions that you represent the exact two sections that we see here.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And thank you so much, because I was going crazy thinking, wait, what, how did cybersecurity get in there? But thank
I
you.
am so sorry. That
That's
is
okay.
my error. Hastily copied and pasted a previous recommendation. So I
But
apologize.
thank you for clarifying.
Any questions before we ask for a motion? All right, is there a motion on the table?
I move that we pass recommendation as stated.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstained? All right, it's unanimously approved.
Great. Thank you. We will work with our AGs to get this submitted and through the public comment period and hopefully back to you in a couple of months. Thank you, Chair Moss.
Excellent. Next, I believe we have, we're going to pause on the update of letters of intent until next meeting and go right to Dr. Schmertz and team. Is that right, to talk about enrollment projections?
Yes, so
Thank you.
without further ado, I will introduce the dynamic duo before you, Mr. Schuster and Dr. Shinlin. They will be collaborating together on a presentation of the 2025 enrollment projections. This is an action item, and Yushin will prompt you at the right time for
I think if you changed it, order now. So, good afternoon, commissioners and Dr. Roy. So today I'm joined by my colleague, Mr. Dan Schuster, to present the enrollment projections 2025 to 2032 for Maryland public colleges and universities. I'm Yushin, I'm Associate Director of the Research and Policy Analysis. So I'm going to start off by introducing some background on why we do enrollment projections, and then Mr. Schuster will give you some context about how the numbers will be used for his work. So let me get started. So yeah, this one. Thank you so much. Can you go to the next slide, please? So, okay, yeah, so it is actually required by Code of Maryland regulations that Maryland Higher Education Commission produces 10-year enrollment projections for public colleges and universities. So these projections will be used by colleges to prepare capital construction projects. So what the number will be used is the approved project 10-year full-time equivalent enrollment. And then I will turn over to Mr. Schuster, and he will give us some background about why, how the number will be used.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Schuster. For the record, I'm capital finance analyst here at MHEC. And as Dr. Lynn said, I'm going to provide a little bit of context here before she gets into the meat of the presentation. So first of all, the reason we do this is because for capital projects, we need to look at capacity, and we need to look at how big buildings, and we have to look at current needs as well as future needs, because these buildings are supposed to last a while once we build them. And it's important to look at statewide projections, because if we look at the institutional level, all of them are, of course, competing with each other to some extent. And so if we use their projections individually, we might wind up in a situation where we build more than we need to statewide. And so statewide, we provide the projections as sort of guideposts for everybody to get on the same page, as well as for budget agencies when they're looking at which projects to approve, they know what guideposts we're using. Next slide, please. So how do we use them when we have them? Well, for one thing, I just want to make it clear, none of these, unlike operating funds, there's no formula that uses any of these projections to decide how much money anybody gets, okay? Capital budgeting, the way it's done is project-based. The institutions have to propose a project that has to make sense to solve particular problems at their institution. A lot of times those involve capacity, a lot of times they don't. And in this day and age right now, especially at community colleges, because of the decline in enrollment we've seen over the last several years, capacity is generally not an issue, and their projects are proposing to solve other types of problems about the age of the building, accessibility, and so on. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some projects that are proposed that do involve capacity that we have to look at when we're reviewing whether it makes sense to fund the programs. And so for those, our projections do come into play. And certainly we have to therefore provide these projections every year so that when
not only our agency, but the other budget agencies are looking at these programs to see what makes sense to build and how big to build it. Next slide, please. So right now, just to give a little bit of preview of what these projections are going to tell us this year. For one thing, what we're saying is for community colleges, based on the numbers we've seen the last few years, based on historical factors, does make sense to plan that enrollment is going to eventually increase up to the levels we saw maybe 2017 or so. And for four-year schools, we're looking at a modest increase over the next 10-year period. And the other important thing to take away from all of this is if you read the literature, nationwide, if there's a concern about enrollment cliff in certain places because of the population. The way, and Yushin will explain it in some more detail in a minute here, but the way our projection system works, we take as a basis the population demographics in the state of Maryland, college age students 10 years from now, and so on. And from that, we can see that there is no sign of enrollment cliff in the state of Maryland in the foreseeable future, and that's important information that we can give to colleges, because our model will show that if it ever does come to fruition, we would see this ahead of time and they can plan accordingly. So that's why we update this every year. But that I'll turn it back over.
It's a quick question.
Yes.
For community colleges, the return to level seen in 2017 would represent how much of an increase over where we are now?
She'll get it.
Okay.
I will present that in a
Oh,
moment.
all right.
Please, so I will take over from here by introducing our enrollment projection model and the numbers. So I will slow down here so you can get a 100% understanding about how the model was functioning and how the model was produced. So as Mr. Schuster just explained, the Maryland higher education enrollment projection is different from individual institutions' projections. So we use a top-down approach. So that is, we start by segment, and then we attribute a bunch of the proportion of the enrollment to each campus, and based on some conversions, historical relationship between the headcount enrollment and FTE, FTDE, and then we transfer that numbers to the FTE and the FTDE number. So next. So yes, so for a segment, so for each segment, full year and community colleges, we did statewide numbers for each enrollment level and each enrollment intensity. So that is full-year undergraduate full-time and part-time, full-year graduate full-time, part-time, and community college full-time and part-time. So with that statewide number, and then we distribute this statewide number by the market share, that is a proportion of the student out of the statewide number for each segment and each level. So basically we give each proportion to each campus, and so that we have the headcount enrollment numbers for each campus. And then based on the past 3 years, the relationship between the headcount enrollment and full-time equivalent and full-time day equivalent would transform the headcount enrollment number to the FTE and FTE. So FTE and FTE is different in the following ways. So FTE basically considers the difference between part-time and full-time from the perspectives of the credit. For example, full-time student may take 12 credit per semester, and part-time student may not take up to 12 credit per semester. So the resources and the facilities they will use are different. And also FTDE is differentiating the student use of the time of the use, so that they can better plan for the off-peak and peak hours, so that they can better plan for the capital budget. So that FTDE will be used by Mr. Schuster in his project. And next slide, please. And though for FTE, so we projected for all public institutions, and for FTDE, UMGC is not excluded because they mostly serve online students. So next slide. So there, and next. And there is the third enrollment projection for the in-state non-credit FTE for community college only, but which is not a focus of today's presentation. The number will not be used by any of our finance team work. But I will present the number to you, and then you can find the detailed methodology and numbers in the report. Okay, so next slide, please.
So, okay, so the whole, sorry, this chart is a little bit off from the version I saw from my own computer. So, but you have the copy of the slides in your hand, so please feel free to refer to all of the funds on that, and hopefully you can still reference some of the function chart. So this whole projection is based on very important assumption. So that is so the proportion of the population by specific age and gender group going to Maryland colleges and universities tend to have a constant level. So to conduct the enrollment projection on that assumption, so we rely on the past 15 years relationship between the population and enrollment. So we conduct 132 regression models. So that models is conducted by every gender, age, enrollment level, segment level, enrollment intensity, so that we can clearly understand what proportion of the population will go to Maryland colleges and universities in the few years. So with that constant relationship we get from the historical data, and we apply that to the projected population from 25 to 34. So which is conducted by Maryland Department of Planning. So question?
Yes, and your regression models, what did your R squared values range?
It's pretty high. It's around like 80.8, so it's 80% something.
Okay. Thank you.
So and then so here we have the base enrollment numbers, which is the enrollment totally impacted by population change. On top of that, we also adjusted this base number by several factors. First, we check the past 5 years historical trend of enrollment so that we can add or subtract some proportion from the base number. Also, we consider high school graduate projections and in-state income levels and tuition levels. And if we observe any significant relationship on top of the change because of the population, so we will apply that relationship between all those factors to the enrollment so that we can proportionally add some numbers or subtract some numbers from the base number. So after doing that adjustment, we have an in-state enrollment number. And then by using the most recent resident rate, we have out of the state enrollment number. And finally, by adding up the both things, we have in-state total headcount enrollment number. Be mindful that the trend of the enrollment will be solely determined by the trend of the population change. So that is to say, if you see an increase in enrollment in the next 10 years, that is totally because we have increased in population. So the factors are basically just to apply a proportionate change to the base fact. So next slide, please. So for many years, for the past years, so this methodology and this assumption has been challenged by the model has failed to capture the over 10 years decline experienced by community college enrollment. So from year 2022, so research office has started test an alternative model called single exponential smoothing. So I will explain to you what that is. So different from the current model, this single exponential smoothing actually does not rely on assumption there is a constant level between the enrollment and population. Instead, it assumes there is no constant relationship between both. So basically, it can be more responsive to the recent trend, and it will capture the most trend instead of historical trend. So give me an example. So next, please. So for example, in the year for 2022, so 3.7% of the female aged from 15 to 19 years old enrolled in community college as full-time. This rate used to be 6.1% back in 2010. So that is 13 years ago. So basically, you can see a clear downward trend here. So if you use our current model, so we will project it 10 years from now, around 5% of the females will enroll in community college full-time. But the alternative model will capture the most recent downward trend. So it will give a lower projection that is 4% of females will enroll in community college full-time in full 2034. So research office has conducted in previous years is something called counterfactual analysis. That is, every year we conduct both models and produce two numbers each year, and we wait until next year to compare those two projections to the actual number for the next year and see how far or how close we are. from the actual number. Next, please. And so the decision is the current model still outperforms the alternative model. I will explain to you why is that. Next, please. So this is the headcount enrollment trend experienced by community college in the past 15 years. You can see a very clear downward trend. Starting from 2010 to 2022, the thing is, as Mr. Schuster just pointed out, we start to see this uptake from 2022. So that is to say, we still actually have to accept the assumption that there is a constant historical relationship between the enrollment and population. It's returning to that constant level. If we did not see this trend, so we probably should not use that assumption. The thing is, we start to see this number overturn from the 3 years from now, and then we start seeing this upward trend already in the 3 years in a row. So that is to say, if we use the alternative model, we will inevitably underestimate the numbers for the community college in the next 10 years. So that is why we decided to go with the current model. That is not to say we abandoned the alternative model permanently. That is to say we didn't see enough sign and evidence so that we can make a decision we should switch the model from the current model to alternative model. So with the current model, so this is our projection. So can you hit next, please? Why there is no number on top? Okay, so I think you already have that in your slide as a hard copy, and also you can find the number in the report from page 7 to page 8. So basically, I will not read through every single number, but can you go back a little bit? Yeah. So basically, it is projected that community college enrollment will increase, full-time will increase by 26.2%. By the year of 2034. So, and then the part-time will increase by 6.6%, 10 years from now. Next slide, please. And then this is the public four-year undergraduate, full-time, part-time. So full-time will increase by 2.2% in 10 years, and part-time will increase by 15% in 10 years. Next, please. And then graduate. So we projected that full-time graduate student will increase by 22% in 10 years, and part-time will increase by 23.4% in next 10 years. Next, please. So if we apply the historical relationship between headcount enrollment and FTE and FTBE, so this is how we convert all the numbers to the FTE and FTBEs. So for public 4 years, we anticipate to see a 9% increase. And for community colleges, we will see a 20% increase in FTE in the next 10 years. And FTD, so excluded UMGC, so public 4 year will see a 5% increase in the next 10 years. And community colleges will see a 20% increase by the year of 2034. So this 47,000 is the number that Mr. Schuster will use for his project. So next slide, please. And finally, this is a separate and independent projection for non-credit in-state FTE for community colleges. So it is projected by the full 2034. So this number will increase by 11%. And then that concludes my presentation. So this is the action item. So it is recommended that Maryland Higher Education Commission accept the 2034 enrollment projections and approve their distribution to public campuses and interstate state agencies. So that is all I present today. So happy to answer any questions.
One quick question. Schuster, I think I asked you this question the last time I saw you, and apologies on our meetings. I heard say that the non-credit enrollment is not going to your financial analysis. And is it simply because the utilization of a non-credit student is just simply lower?
So to correct that, we actually do it.
Oh,
okay. So in the past, we have not. I think Comar changed in 2016 to give us the ability to do that if we choose to do it. And in the last couple of years, I worked with some of the folks at the community colleges to figure out the best way to actually, within our current regulations, count the use of the space for those needs in our space needs calculations, because it's really apples and oranges in a lot of cases because they're not having it at the same time and things like that. So we had to dig into the data a little bit, But we figured out a way to do it, and we do actually count it now. And so they do report the credit hour uses, or contact hour uses, I should say, for the non-credit workforce needs. And we do take that into account for our space needs calculations. Yeah, great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion?
I move to approve the projections presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? All right, unanimous approval. Thank you both very much.
Thank
for all your
you.
hard work. And I believe that concludes our time-sensitive business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
To all of the commissioners for your conscientiousness, particularly for the review meeting. We do a lot of work, and I
And
really appreciate the
And thank you to
time.
the MHEC team.
And the MHEC.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day.
I want to look at Bill. Oh, I say.